Your Honor, just as a preliminary matter, we did talk about an exhibit yesterday during the testimony of Mr. Bright. We have now marked that exhibit as plaintiff's exhibit 95, and would like to offer it in evidence.
Objection to 95. And that document is, can you tell me what that is?
These are some notes of a telephone conference between Mr. Bright and Rob Hoskins. The date on them is October 9th, 2000.
Thank you. All right, anything else we need to say before we call you?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that will be.
At this time, we will call Michael Cunningham.
Come forward.
Please, sir. I can ask you to raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you give the court today in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you would take the witness stand, please, sir, and state your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
My name is Michael Cunningham. Cunningham, C-U-N-N-I-N-G-H-A-M.
Good morning, Mr. Cunningham.
Good morning.
My name is Troy Tessier, as you probably know, and we represent Anderson County in a case involving Mr. Preston. Where do you currently live?
Anderson,
And how long have you lived in Anderson?
since 1997.
What do you do for a living?
I work for AMED Health.
And you went to college at Clemson?
Yes, sir.
Did you start working for Anderson County while you were in college?
No, sir.
When did you start working for Anderson County?
January of 1998.
And didn't you work with Anderson County prior to that as an intern?
No, sir.
Okay. Not during college at all?
No, sir. I work for Greenville County.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
Were you the assistant county administrator for Anderson County for a period of time?
Yes, sir.
And about what time period?
Perhaps roughly 2002 forward.
Okay, and at some point were you then promoted to deputy county administrator?
Yes, sir.
And when was that approximately?
Perhaps 2006.
Can you describe, generally speaking, what are the differences are in responsibilities for an assistant county administrator and a deputy county administrator?
Assistant county administrator, I think I had more direct departmental responsibility than as deputy county administrator. We had levels, division directors, which would then kind of directly report up to the deputy administrator, to the county administrator, and I served as the county administrator whenever our current county administrator was not there. So I think it was a bit higher level of administrative responsibility from the assistant to the deputy.
And as the deputy county administrator, are you the person next in line behind the county administrator in terms of the chain of command, so to speak?
Yes, sir.
And did you report directly to Joey Preston during the entire time you worked with Anderson County leading up to November of 2008?
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that happened in 2008, and I want to focus you, if I could, on October 2008. By October of 2008, did you know that there were discussions being held about the possibility of a severance agreement for Mr. Preston?
Not until late October.
Okay. And then at about that same time, in late October of 2008, did you know there were discussions going on about the possibility, at least, of hiring you to replace Mr. Preston as the county administrator?
Not until, again, late October.
And do you recall how you came to know that?
Yes, sir. I had a meeting with 3 of the members of county council on or about October the 22nd, where this issue was discussed.
And do you remember the circumstances of the meeting in terms of, for example, where did you meet?
Yes, sir. We met in Greenwood, South Carolina, at a restaurant at Charlie's, I believe.
Okay. And present with you at the meeting were Gracie Floyd, Larry Greer, and Ron Wilson?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And what did you discuss at the meeting?
Your Honor, hearsay?
He hasn't asked to quote anyway, he asked the subjects that were discussed
Right.
over the.
What was discussed at the meeting?
We discussed the possibility of me becoming the county administrator and the issue that that there was the potential for some type of severance agreement with Mr. Preston.
And was one of the things that was discussed whether or not you might be interested in taking the job as county administrator if Mr. Preston left that job?
Yes.
Did you talk at all about what the salary might look like if you were to take the job as county administrator?
Not at that time.
Did you have discussions with Mr. Greer at that point in time about how challenging the job would be if you were to take the job?
Your Honor, same objection. He is now specifically asking about discussions with an identified person.
Increasingly becoming more specific, I agree with the objection. This time I want to overrule it, unless he has for specific words.
And Your Honor, we're not offering to prove the truth of the matter, sir, as much as the impact on Mr.
I've overruled the
Thank you,
objection at this point in time, but I'm cautioning you about becoming too specific about who said what when. I'm ruling in your favor. Go ahead.
Did the discussion include discussion about how difficult the job of county administrator might be if you were to take on that job?
Yes, sir, that was a part of the conversation.
And did you have an impression based on your experience in working with Anderson County up until that point, and you had been working there for several years, did you have an impression about how difficult the job might be if you were to take the job of serving as county administrator?
Yes,
What was your impression?
that it would be a challenge.
And why?
There had been for some time a very contentious relationship between some members of county council, and it was a difficult political environment, certainly. And so that I was aware of all of that.
After this meeting that you had at O'Charlie's in Greenwood, did you obtain a copy of Mr. Preston's existing employment agreement?
I did.
How did you get that?
I followed Mr. Greer to his home, and he had a copy of it, and he made a copy of that for me to take and look over.
And why did you do that? Why did you want a copy of Mr. Preston's existing contract?
I didn't have a copy of it, and if we were talking about employment, I wanted to see some document that set out terms for employment for a county administrator.
And would you agree with me, Mr. Cunningham, that you communicated with Mr. Preston about the possibility that you might be hired in his place?
I did.
And how did that happen? What type of communication did you have with Mr. Preston?
I spoke with him person to person about that. It was my desire not to have anything happen behind his back, or that he would be aware of all conversations that I had.
And what do you recall specifically about your communication with Mr. Preston about the possibility that you might end up taking over his job?
Only that, I hope that wouldn't be the case, but that I certainly would look at it absent of anything that happened to him, and that I would reach some conclusion about that, but I had not at that point done so.
And did you include it in the communications you had with Mr. Preston about this possibility that you might be asked to take over as county administrator? Did you discuss with him proposed changes you wanted to make in the employment agreement that you might sign if you did take over?
Leading here.
Leading is allowed to a certain degree, and I'm going to allow it in this case. Critical question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, I gave him what I thought I would like to see as changes in an employment contract.
And do you recall how you did that? I mean, was it a marked up copy or?
I believe I think I emailed that to him, just here's what I would see as changes in an employment contract.
And do you think that was a separate email where you outlined the changes, or did you also include the document itself with markup?
I think it was in a separate email.
And do you recall any of the particular changes you were mentioning to Mr. Preston that you would like to see?
I don't recall the specifics of what all those changes were at the time, other than I know that there was one related to the county vehicle.
Would it be fair to say, Mr. Cunningham, that in general terms, you used Mr. Preston's existing employment agreement as a guide for one that you might consider signing yourself?
Yes.
Did you later meet with anyone else from Anderson County about the possibility that you might take over as county administrator?
I had another meeting with those 3 members of county council.
Okay, which 3 members are you talking about?
That would be, 2 members at that time, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Greer.
And do you recall where that meeting was?
That was also in Greenwood, also at a restaurant, I believe Ruby Tuesdays, and that would have been in mid-November of 2008.
And would you agree that both of the meetings you've mentioned that were held in Greenwood were held before the November 18, 2008 county council meeting?
Yes.
What did you discuss at the second meeting, the one with Mr. Greer and Mr. Wilson?
That, again, I was not privy to what was happening with the negotiations with Mr. Preston, but should things proceed, that I would be willing to take on the responsibility as county administrator, and then we discussed salary.
And you recall what you asked for in terms of an annual salary?
Yes.
What did you ask for?
$125,000.
Do you know whether you knew it then or whether you know it now, do you know how that salary, $125,000 a year, compares with the salary that Mr. Preston was getting for the job of county administrator in 2008?
I believe that it was less than what he was getting as county administrator, but I did not know his exact salary amount.
Would it be fair to say that you were willing to take on the job of county administrator if they asked you to do it at a rate of pay less than what Mr. Preston had been getting?
Yes.
Is that based in part on the fact that you had less experience at that point in time?
I think, yes, that was a part of it, as well as just it was what I deemed to be a fair starting salary.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Cunningham, that you did not ask for any type of a premium in terms of your annual salary in order to deal with the difficult political environment that you knew you would be stepping into?
No, sir.
You would not agree with that? Or
No, I'm sorry. That is an accurate statement. And no, I did not ask for a premium.
When did you know, if at all, that a vote would happen at the November 18, 2008 county council meeting that would include a consideration of hiring you as county administrator?
Probably on November the 17th.
And do you remember how you came to know that?
I think it was a conversation with Mr. Preston, just regarding the fact that there had been no resolution to his particular issue. I had a contract in hand that should that move forward, that I would be willing to consider. And I think during that time frame, he said, well, you know, this is something that will come up.
And do you know whether or not Mr. Preston had any involvement in the actual drafting of the employment agreement that you ended up signing?
No, I don't know if he had any actual involvement. I sent it to him, and then I don't know exactly who drafted the actual document. My assumption is that the county attorney.
And did you get the final version of the proposed contract that you had on November 17th, it sounds like? Did you get that from Mr. Preston?
I did.
Let me ask you some questions about Michael Thompson. You agree with me, do you not, that Michael Thompson was the chair of county council in 2008?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any understanding as to whether or not Mr. Thompson was seeking or actually sought employment with the county beyond his service as county councilman during 2008?
Not until mid-November 2008. That was a desire of his.
And how did you come to learn in mid-November 2008 that Mr. Thompson was looking for a job from Anderson County?
It was a conversation with Mr. Preston regarding that issue.
And what do you remember about that conversation?
Just that Mr. Preston mentioned that Mr. Thompson was indeed looking for employment beyond his term on county council, possibly with the county, and that he had concerns about a number of issues, but mainly about the health of his wife and their economic viability, and that he was indeed seeking employment with the county.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. Preston about whether or not it would be appropriate for the county to hire Mr. Thompson under the circumstances?
We did.
And what do you remember about that conversation?
I told him that I had concerns about hiring Mr. Thompson as a county employee.
And why did you have concerns about hiring Mr. Thompson as a county employee in November 2008?
And it goes back to the contentious political environment that existed at the county at the time, and it was my opinion that would not help resolve any of those issues.
And did Mr. Thompson come to see you at some point after the November 18, 2008 county council meeting to ask you to hire him for a job?
He did come and ask me about the possibility of employment with the county.
And was that after November 18, 2008?
It was.
Do you remember what job he was asking you to hire him into?
I don't recall what specific job that he was asking to be hired into, only that he was hoping for employment.
And did you actually hire Mr. Thompson at that point?
I did not.
What did you tell him, if anything?
I told him that I would certainly consider something like that, but I shared with him my real concerns about him being employed by the county, how I didn't think that would be a benefit for the county and not for him personally.
And at the time that Mr. Thompson came to see you about a job, was he also coming to see you as county council chairman to have you execute your master employment agreement as the new county administrator?
No, I don't believe those were at the same time.
Did Mr. Thompson, is he the one who brought you your master employment agreement to sign?
I don't recall who brought that agreement to me directly, but certainly in his capacity as chairman, he would have been involved. in that process.
And
But I don't recall him hand delivering it to me.
do you agree with me, and I'll show it to you if I need to, I'm just wondering if you remember, but your employment agreement with the county dated November 19, 2008 is signed by you and Mr. Thompson and Mr. Mack.
That's, I have not seen the document that you referred to, but I'm sure that,
Okay. Yeah, of course, Your Honor.
Yes. At this point, I'll remind the attorneys that we're still under the sequestration order. If there's any witnesses present, I don't know if there are any, they need to step out. That continues throughout the trial. I didn't mention it before we started.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, that's fine. Yes, sir, you may approach.
Mr. Cunningham, I'm gonna try to do this without falling down like I did yesterday. This is exhibit number 9. It's already been admitted. And just to refresh your memory, but do you agree that that's a copy of the contract you signed on or about 19 November 2008?
yes, sir.
And does it have your signature, Michael Thompson's signature, and Mr. McAbee's signature on the final page?
Yes, sir.
You don't remember looking at this document how you received it in terms of when it was brought to you for signature?
That's correct.
Was one of the reasons why you thought it would be not in the best interest of the county to hire Mr. Thompson, the fact that you believed it would be a conflict of interest for Mr. Thompson to seek employment after he had voted on your contract?
Your Honor, I appreciate the court's willingness to have some pleading, but there should be some sort of,
I'll sustain the objection at this time.
Can you tell me any other reasons why you were concerned about hiring Mr. Thompson for county employment?
Again, it was clearly as a result of the political environment at the time. And my goal was hopefully to serve as a bridge kind of from where we were to where I hope we could get to as a county, and that I saw that as a possible obstacle to that. And again, I didn't feel like it was in his best interest or was in the best interest of the county.
And are you aware of the ethical rules that apply to conflicts of interest in Anderson County
I'm not.
as a general matter?
As a general matter, I'm aware of certain conflicts of interest that could be there, but my understanding for Mr. Thompson is that he was seeking employment when his relationship as a county council person with the county would have concluded.
Do you know what happened after you told Mr. Thompson that you would not hire him into a county job with respect to Mr. Thompson?
Do I know what happened to him?
Yeah, in other words, after you told Mr. Thompson that you would not hire him, is that
Right.
fair? After you told him you would not hire him, do you know what he did with respect to county employment?
Oh, I do not.
Do you know whether or not he went to see Mr. Preston to try to get hired for a job?
No, I do not know that for sure.
At the time, would you agree with me that as of December 1st, 2008, you were the county administrator of Anderson County?
That's correct.
So on or after December 1st, would you agree with me that Mr. Preston was no longer serving as county administrator?
That's correct.
So any decision to hire Mr. Thompson, if one were made, would you agree would have had to been made by you if it was on or after December 1st?
Yes.
And did you ever become aware that Mr. Thompson had been hired to a county job?
No.
When you became county administrator on December 1st, 2008, did you become aware at some point in time that the county had a contract between itself and a company owned by Allison Shawn?
Yes.
Do you know who Allison Shawn is?
Yes, I do.
And did you know that she was the daughter of Ron Wilson?
Yes.
Did you know that at the time, that you learned that she had a contract with the county?
Yes.
Did the contract that Ms. Shawn's company had with the county include a buyout provision?
I did not know that the contract had buyout provision until probably early January of 2009, when that was brought to my attention by Mr. Daniels, I believe, who was the internal auditor that the county council had hired.
When you learned that Ms. Shawn's company's contract with the county had a buyout provision, did that surprise you?
Yes.
Do you know about let me ask this, do you know who Heather Jones is?
Yes.
Did you become aware at any time that there were certain documents in Heather Jones' file that were backdated?
No.
Did Mr. Preston ever talk to you about backdating any documents for Ms. Jones's personnel file?
We talked about a number of issues as related to economic development. The thing that stood out to me was an employment issue with a former county employee. that stood out. But there was a lot of conversations during that time. I don't recall one about backdating anything in Heather's file.
Well, let me ask it a different way then, Mr. Cunningham. If Mr. Preston were to ask you to approve backdating documents for Ms. Jones's file, or any employee's file, would that be troubling to you?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I object to the question to the extent that he's using the term backdating. I mean, there was it's clear in this case that what happened was they dated a document at the point in time of Jones's employment starting, and to the extent that he's asking the witness to imply that there was some sort of, I object to the term in these.
I understand you object to the term, but he's questioning the witness, and you can certainly urge a different term later if you like.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple more questions at most, Mr. Cunningham. If Mr. Preston had asked you to sign off on a document for Ms. Jones or any other employee of the county at the time you were county administrator, where the document was backdated, in other words, sign a document today, but it has a date a year ago, would you have done it?
I think I would have had trouble signing that type of document. I would have certainly wanted a lot more information about why it was necessary. I don't say that I wouldn't have, but it would have been trouble.
And you don't recall any situation in which Mr. Preston talked to you about putting dates on any documents for personnel files that were dates prior to the date of the conversation you might have had?
I don't recall any of those conversations.
That's all I have. If you would answer Mr. Davis' questions.
Mr. Davis, your witness.
Thank you, Mayor.
Your Honor, may I?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Good morning, Mr. Cunningham.
Good morning.
We haven't met, but my name's Lane Davis, and I represent Mr. Preston in this case. Let me first start by returning to a little bit of your background, just briefly. You had a BA from Clemson, is that right?
That's correct.
And you had an MBA from University of South Carolina and Clemson?
MPA.
MPA. And just for the purposes of the record, can you say what an MPA is?
Sure, it's a master's in public administration.
After that, you went to Greenville for a short stint,
Yes, sir.
and then you went to Anderson County and started off as an intern,
That's correct.
and you progressively worked yourself all the way up the ladder to deputy administrator.
That's correct.
How long were you with Anderson County?
From January of 1998 up until March the 1st, 2009.
And during that time, there was about a 6-year period that you worked with Mr. Preston.
Actually, I worked with him the entire time I was with the county.
So the entire. And during that period of time, it's true, is it not, that you never saw Mr. Preston do anything illegal. Is that right?
That's correct.
And during that time, you never saw Mr. Preston do anything unethical, right?
That's correct.
You were asked some questions on direct examination about meetings that occurred in Greenwood. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Or it was a meeting in Greenwood, right?
2 meetings.
2 meetings. And at that point in time, is it your understanding that an employment dispute had arisen between the county and Mr. Preston?
Yes, sir.
And that during that period of time, is it also your understanding that Mr. Greer, for example, on the personnel committee, was trying to evaluate potential alternatives for succession after Mr. Preston's
potential leaving the county.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you were the person that they wanted to be the successor.
Yes, sir.
Now, having been in county government for all these years, can we agree that it makes sense that if there's a potential for the administrator to leave employment, that the county council would evaluate who would come in behind him?
Yes, sir.
You would want there to be some sort of vacuum or gap in the administrator position when the administrator left, right?
Ideally.
In your experience with the county, it's true, is it not, that personnel matters are treated with confidentiality?
That is correct.
And your meetings in Greenwood were in Greenwood in part because you were discussing personnel matters.
That's correct.
And on direct, you referenced the contentious political climate that had arisen during this time frame. Remember that?
Yes.
And it's true, is it not, that having the meeting outside of actual immediate area of Anderson was probably the only way that the confidentiality could be maintained?
I would agree with that, yes.
On direct examination, you were asked a question about a proposed draft of a master employment agreement that you sent to Mr. Preston. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And it's true at the time that you sent that draft that Mr. Preston responded to you, right?
That's correct.
And one of the things that Mr. Preston said to you at that time was, hey, Michael, just to let you know, my employment situation remains unresolved.
Yes.
If you look at Plaintiff's Exhibit 9 for me, it's the exhibit that's behind the paragraph symbol in the 9 that's in your binder. It should be the first half. Plaintiff's Exhibit 9 is the master employment contract that you executed with the county, is it not?
Yes.
And you mirrored that master employment contract upon the existing administrator's contract, right?
To a degree, yes.
And it would make sense to mirror your contract on what the contract of the prior administrator actually was, right?
It would.
There's no point in reinventing the wheel.
None that I saw. Again, to a degree, there were things that I felt I would like to do differently.
Will you look at Defense Exhibit 108 for me, which should be the very next exhibit behind the following tab? Mr. Cunningham, page 1 is an email from Michael Thompson to you dated December 4th, 2008. Is it not?
It is.
And attached to that email is Michael Thompson's resume, right?
It is.
And on Michael Thompson's resume, on page 1, it reflects that Michael Thompson had an MBA. Did he not?
It does.
And he had, as it says in the very top, He was a business professional who had experience managing a $55 million account for an international automotive company. You understood that too, right?
Yes.
And beyond that, Mr. Thompson had significant experience in real estate matters. Did you know that?
I did.
And he had 9 years in purchasing experience. Did he not?
He did.
And but for the fact that Mr. Thompson had been the county council chairman, and but for the fact that the political climate in Anderson County at that point in time had become contentious, can we agree that Mr. Thompson would have been a great candidate to work for the county?
I could agree, yes.
And beyond that, his experience as a county council member put him in a unique position with respect to knowing about how the county worked, right?
I would agree.
Mr. Cunningham, in your experience, it's true, is it not, that Mr. Thompson was a good man?
Yes.
He was a fair man?
Yes.
And he was an honest man, wasn't
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe reputation of Mr. Thompson is an issue in the case.
he? Your Honor, his plea has an allegation that Mr. Thompson is some sort of liar. His complaint.
Overruled.
Each time I pause, Mr. Cunningham, I'm skipping things, so that's a good thing.
No complaint.
I want to turn your attention to the early 2008 time frame. You remember an instance where certain council members came to the administrator's office to copy credit card receipts?
I do.
And those council members were Cindy Wilson,
That's correct.
and was Bob Aldrich there too?
Yes, sir.
And did they bring a wide variety of people with them?
They did.
And the purpose of them coming to the administrator's office was because they requested to see county credit card receipts, right?
That's correct.
And the response from the administrator's office was, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll let you look at those receipts, right?
That was the response.
And all those receipts were up in the administrator's library waiting, or the administrator's conference room, waiting for them to look at them.
That's correct.
But when they arrived with an entourage.
That's correct.
And part of that entourage included people from radio stations, news stations, paper, media, all sorts of people, right?
There was a large group of people.
And beyond that, they brought with them to look at those documents that they requested in their capacity as county council members. They brought with them a mass of people from the general public at large too, right?
Again, there was a large group. Some I was familiar with, most not.
I'd like to turn your attention to the Palmetto Agricultural Consultants contract. And I call it a PAC if you don't mind, because I don't think I could say that again. It's true that there was a first PAC contract, and then there was an amended PAC contract, correct?
I was not familiar with the first or the iterations of the contracts. Again, it's early 2009.
And you were asked on direct about a buyout clause in the amended contract. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It's true, however, that in that amended contract, there was no minimum hourly amount of time that Sean was required to work.
I don't recall that in the contract, no.
And there was nothing that required the county to hire Sean for any minimum amount of time. Isn't that right?
No, I don't recall that in the contract.
But the earlier contract actually had a requirement in it with respect to time commitments. Do you remember that?
Again, I don't recall the first contract. The one that is most significant to me is the one was brought to my attention from Mr. Daniel.
I understand. Do you ever recall a point in time when a personnel issue with respect to Bob Daniel arose?
I'm sorry, a personnel issue as a result, as it relates to Bob Daniel?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What was that?
The actual hiring of Mr. Daniel and how that would be, I guess, facilitated by the county.
Do you recall any other personnel issues related to Mr. Daniel?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevant.
This is their financial guru. The whole underpinnings of their case arose out of an investigation commencing in January of 2009 and then going all the way through to the fall of 2009. Then you see in November of 2009 that they filed a complaint against Mr. Preston. And the person who was going through all of these financial documents, going through online, going through in Bean County, every single thing. And presumably the person who they actually asked about on direct with respect to the Shawn contract. And he was the guy, at least as to the financial components, who was conducting the investigation. And so I'm just asking Mr. Cunningham if he knows something about any personnel matters that may have arisen about this person who was in a dead sentence. Do you recall any other personnel issues?
Yes, as it relates to accusations about county employees, also as it relates to just the flow of information to Mr. Daniel from county employees. There was a question of there's a huge volume of information being requested. How do we facilitate that? And again, there was, I assume that Mr. Daniel was chasing down any number of rumors as it related to county employees.
What were the accusations against Mr. Daniel?
Objection. Hearsay. Relevant.
Actually lay a foundation to his knowledge of having outcome about any information he's going to testify about.
Mr. Cunningham, it's true, is it not, that during this time frame, you were actually an acting county administrator?
Yes.
And when personnel issues came up involving people who were working in the county, they would flow back to you, would they not?
They would.
You'd be aware of a personnel issue that arose with respect to a person like Bob Daniel, right?
I would, although he was not my employee.
Fair enough. And in fact, you do know about those issues, don't you?
I'm aware of some.
And what were those accusations?
One that sticks out was the accusation that there was a relationship between a consultant with the county and a county employee.
The consultant with the county was Mr. Daniel?
No, I'm sorry. It was Representative John Scott.
Let me ask you this. During this time frame, we're looking at, you took over on December 1st of 2008, correct? During that time frame, it was your understanding that Mr. Preston was supposed to stick around until the beginning of the year, right?
That he would be there to the end of the year to clean out his office and to be around to assist should I need it. Yes.
And what was Mr. Preston supposed to be doing during this time period, to your understanding?
To my understanding, providing support should I need it as it related to transition between me being the county administrator and his ultimate departure.
Mr. Preston was supposed to stick around for a month to help you with the transition, right?
Should there be an assistance needed, yes.
And Mr. Preston was supposed to stick around for a month to help you clean up whatever loose ends were straggling from his administration to help usher your administration in.
He was there to be a resource.
Mr. Cunningham, will you turn to Defense Exhibit 66? Was this a memorandum that you authored to Tommy Dunn, who was the representative from District 5 on the Anderson County?
Yes,
And this memorandum specifically relates to Heather Jones' vehicle, does it not?
it does.
And at this point in time, that is in February of 2009, there were allegations swirling about her vehicle, was there not?
There was.
And even more specifically, those allegations were that Homeland Security funds were used to buy that vehicle.
That is correct.
Do you remember where those allegations came from?
I really do not. There, if you're familiar at all with Anderson County politics, that there are lots of allegations that flow daily.
There's a lot of unsubstantiated allegations, aren't there?
There are lots of allegations of all sorts. It's a colorful place to be.
And after these allegations cropped up, there was an investigation into whether Homeland Security funds were used to buy Heather Jones' vehicle. Right?
Absolutely.
And during that investigation, if you'll turn 3 pages, it's true, is it not, that it was discovered that Miss Jones' vehicle was purchased all the way back in December 13th of 2006, right? If you turn the page, you should see what looks like
It's a copy of a check.
check register. Yes.
Right, okay, yes, I see that, dated December of 2006.
And the date of that check is December 13th of 2006 because Heather Jones commenced working with the county in October of 2006. Did you know?
Yes, that, as I recall, that was roughly the time frame she started working with the county.
And all those questions that were asked to you about backdating documents, they were asked to you about backdating memorandum that related to the October of 2006 time frame when Heather Jones first started to work. Is that true?
Yes.
As the economic development director, it's true, is it not, that during the entirety of your time in Anderson County, Heather Jones had a vehicle.
Yes,
The economic development director needs a vehicle, right?
that is correct, yes.
If people from major corporations are interested in investing in Anderson County and they're flying in, the economic development director needs something to pick them up in the airport, right?
That is correct.
In the December of 2008 time frame, do you remember any issues that arose with respect to the Broadway Lake project?
I do.
And just by way of background, what exactly was the Broadway Lake project?
Objections. Relevant.
Your Honor, it's relevant because what we're going to see, and this is actually a fairly short, and the very next one's a very short line of questions, but it's relevant because of this. In December of 2008, I believe the witness is going to testify about a communication that he had with an incoming county council member, and that incoming council member gave him a certain instruction with respect to this project, and that he's going to probably testify about what his response to that instruction was. And he's also going to testify most likely about what another council member may have, the actual city council member may have told him about this project. And that later, after that person was sworn in, what his reaction to that incoming county council member's request was I believe, used as something cited as an act of insubordination. And so it goes to the line of questioning and what we were starting to establish yesterday, was that we had this control group starting in June of 2008, continuing through December 31st of 2008. And that the chapter line and verse, they increasingly started acting like they were the county council. And it didn't matter whether they were sworn in or not. And in fact, in this instance, this guy told him something to do, and when he didn't respond the way he wanted, when he became a county council member, he cited it as insubordination. And that's the point. And there's another point, is that we had a line of question about some other things that he told him in this exact same time frame, that I think that it will inform the court about
Time
exactly
frame between June
This is
08 and January of 09.
Yes, and specifically what we're talking about now is the December of 08 timeframe, after Mr. Cunningham had assumed the position as county administrator, and before these incoming folks had actually been sworn in and taken office, at least officially.
Your Honor, that's what he said yesterday. There's a time period that's relevant in this case, and that's leading up to the vote on November 18, 2008, when the severance agreement was approved. As a legal matter, the court can recognize or take judicial notice if it wishes, but there is no legal authority for newly elected county council members to do anything on behalf of the county until they're sworn in. That should be conceded. And so whether they were acting or talking amongst each other or giving a heads up to somebody that when we come on board, here's some of the things we're thinking about, has no bearing on the issues before the court, which was the signing of, the vote for and the signing of a severance agreement worth $1.1 million to Joey Preston, was that arbitrary and capricious at the time. So it had nothing after that time has any bearing on whether that was arbitrary and capricious at the time and whether there were tainted votes that supported that at the time.
Your Honor, is he dismissing all claims except for the arbitrary and capricious one? Because if he is, I'll take that.
I asked that question at the beginning of the hearings, what issues were still in the case. I didn't see that you pared any down, have you?
No, sir, the tainted votes I just said.
Okay, overruled, you may proceed.
Apologize, Your Honor, my water consumption rate is alarming this morning.
That's okay. We're talking a lot. So are others in the court. Not holding that against you. You may proceed.
Mr. Cunningham, what was the Broadway Lake project again?
It was a project to build a new community center on an existing county property on the shores of Broadway Lake.
And it's true, is it not, that in the December of 2008 timeframe, Mr. Moore had a conversation with you about Broadway Lake?
He did.
And Mr. Moore told you something that he had about concerns with the bidding of the project, right?
He did.
And he wanted you to halt progress on that project, right?
He did.
And he cited that there were problems with this bidding process, but he never told you what they were, right?
That's correct.
Never provided you with any sort of backup documents with respect to problems with the bid process.
He did not.
At the same time, and acting almost in concert with, Councilwoman Cindy Wilson also sent you a note, didn't she?
She did.
And what Cindy Wilson told you, sir, was that you needed to cease and desist the Broadway Lake project, didn't she?
That is correct.
It's true, is it not, that after the new council was sworn in January of 2009, sometime after that, there were allegations of insubordination made against you, were there not?
That's correct.
And one of the things that they cited was that you disobeyed Eddie Moore with respect to the Broadway Lake project.
That's correct.
You had another meeting with Mr. Moore, too, in the December timeframe, didn't you?
Yes.
And during that meeting, Mr. Moore came into your office, right?
That's correct.
And during that meeting, Mr. Moore posed a question to you. He said, if I give you a list of employees, will you terminate them?
Yes,
And this was before Mr. Moore was ever sworn in. Right?
that's correct.
And later, you found out that on the actual day that Mr. Moore was sworn in, he vowed that your time as administrator was now over, right?
I did hear that, yes.
At some point in time, you were terminated, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
And you were terminated because you were asked to sign a new contract.
That's correct.
And the new contract that they asked you to sign wasn't one that had a term, right?
That's correct.
So what you were asked to do was to forego your contract with the term and replace it with an at-will contract.
That is the term that was used to describe that particular contract, yes.
And this conversation this issue was first brought to your attention in the law office of Bob Walker,
That's correct.
where you had a conference, right, with Mr. Walker?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Waldron assured you that your family didn't have the financial resources to litigate this as far as it needed to go, didn't you?
Objection. Hearsay.
Admission by a party opponent, he was a county councilman.
Mr. Waldron in 2009.
Yes, he was. You should know that he was on, testified yesterday, he was on county councilman.
Preston, I'll address him today. Thank you.
Sorry. He was on county council in 2010, as he testified just yesterday.
That was my recollection. Overruled. Members did.
And what Mr. Waldron told you was that your family didn't have the financial resources to fight this battle as far as it needed to go, did you?
That's correct.
Mr. Waldron told you one more thing. Did he say that it was better to know the judge than the law?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cunningham, I wish we could have met under better circumstances, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
You'll wait just 1 second, sir. Just don't. Thank you. Thank you, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cunningham, in December of 2008, you had a considerable amount of experience, would you say, in being at least the deputy county administrator?
Yes, sir.
Did you need Mr. Preston to help you do your job during that 31-day period of time?
I appreciated his help in doing my job.
Or did you need it?
Need, I would say no.
Mr. Davis asked you about your master employment agreement, which is exhibit number 9. I don't know if you still have that in front of you.
I have 2 copies of it, actually.
Okay. By and large, would you agree that that contract is very much the same as the master employment agreement under which Joey Preston was operating?
I can't give you a percentage. It is different from Mr. Preston's agreement, but the structure and form, I would say, is similar.
And they both have the same provision with respect to how long they last, correct?
Yes.
And you have had litigation with the county over that, your version of the contract, right?
Yes, sir.
If I may mark an exhibit as for identification, Your Honor. This would probably be number 96.
You may.
Mr. Cunningham, I'm going to show you what I've marked as plaintiff's exhibit number 96 for identification. Just ask if you can identify what that is.
Reads Court of Common Pleas, 10th Judicial Circuit, civil action, number 2009 CP-04-1693, Michael Cunningham plaintiff versus Anderson County defendant.
Would you agree with me that that is an order of judgment issued by Judge McCauley in your case against Anderson County?
Yes, sir.
And in that case, Judge McCauley granted summary judgment in favor of Anderson County on your claims related to your contract, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look at page 10 of that document for me. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
At the bottom, the last paragraph, it says, in sum, the law in South Carolina is that once a new county council has taken office, a contract that deals with a governmental function and that purports to bind the new council is invalid as a matter of law. And a party to the contract has no right of action to enforce the contract or to seek damages for its breach for any period of the contract that extends beyond the term of the old council. Accordingly, this court concludes that Cunningham has no right to enforce the master employment agreement to the extent it purported to be for a term extending beyond January 4th, 2009. Isn't that what the judge ruled in your case?
Yes, sir.
And that case now, I believe, is currently on appeal, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we would offer exhibit number 96 in the evidence.
Your Honor, I actually think that they have a relevance problem. Here's why. It's not a final order of it. It's admittedly under appeal.
That doesn't go to relevance, Your
It
Honor.
doesn't go to relevance.
Well, how would it be relevant?
To the fact that it is a public record. I assume it's filed with the clerk's office.
But it goes to what
Well,
issue?
you're arguing the weight of it as opposed to its admissibility.
Well, I guess my argument is this, Your Honor. If it's an order that's under
Weight
appeal.
of it, there's another time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, but if it's an order that it's under appeal, it's something that it has no finalization, then it's something that's in limbo. So, I mean, how can it have relevance?
I understand your position, so I'll admit it, and you cannot argue the weight of it, but it's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Mr. Cunningham, to your knowledge, did Mr. Moore or any other council member-elect in December of 2008, so before they took office, did any of them have the legal authority to act for the county?
No, sir.
Mr. Davis asked you about accusations and personnel issues that you became aware of in 2009. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And then you indicated that you had heard about an accusation involving a county consultant and a county employee having an affair, right?
Yes, sir.
He didn't ask you much further about that, obviously, once you told him the answer, but the consultant issue was Representative John Scott.
That's correct.
Representative John Scott is a friend of Joey Preston's, correct?
An acquaintance. I'm not sure how close our friendship is, but
Are you aware, or did you become aware, that Representative John Scott had a consulting contract with Anderson County that predated your time as the county administrator?
yes, sir.
And that consulting contract had a generous buyout provision, did it not?
I was not aware of that until, again, Mr. Daniel brought that to my attention in, I guess, 2009, early 2009.
It was brought to your attention that Representative John Scott's consulting contract with the county had a generous buyout provision, right?
It was brought to my attention,
And
yes.
that's a contract that was signed on behalf of Anderson County by Mr. Preston.
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Your Honor, maybe excuse the witness.
Any objection to witness being excused?
None.
Sir, you're free to go. You don't have to stay, but you do remain under the court's order concerning sequestration of witnesses. You should not discuss your testimony with anyone until this case is ended. Thank you very much.
Mr. William McAbee.
See you in the courtroom.
He's just outside.
All right, clerk, will step out and ask for William McAbee. William McAbee.
I'd like to ask you to raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you solemnly swear affirm testimony you'll give the court today in this case to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you would take the witness stand and state your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
I'm Willie Horton McAbee Jr., M-C-A-B-E-E.
Your witness, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I believe we agreed yesterday that any witnesses that are associated with the other side, we may interrogate by leading questions.
Any objection?
That is our agreement.
I thought that would be the case. You may proceed, Ms. Ashton. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. McAbee. My name is Tally Parham. I'm here on behalf of Anderson County. Were you involved in the Sons of Confederate Veterans with Mr. Ron Wilson and Joey Preston?
Yes,
And you know those two individuals from that organization?
yes,
And you socialized with Mr. Preston?
I have, yes,
You served 2 terms on Anderson County Council, correct?
yes,
The first, you were elected in 2004,
yes,
and the second in 2006.
yes.
When you ran in 2006, did you actually run on a platform that was opposed to Mr. Preston?
No,
You did not.
I did not.
What about Mr. Ron Wilson? When he ran in 2006, did his platform include criticism or opposition to Mr. Preston?
Yes,
And Mr. Michael Thompson's 2006 campaign, did he also include in his campaign's opposition to Mr. Joey Preston?
not in 2006.
Was it another year?
Yes,
Okay, so at some point he campaigned against Mr. Preston.
yes,
Mr. Wilson and Mr. Thompson never actually took any action designed to carry out their promise or their campaign against Mr. Preston, did they?
they did not.
So Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wilson would be examples that someone who, a proof of someone who makes a campaign promise does not always carry through with that promise. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Those are campaign statements of 2 other people. I don't know that there's a foundation that Mr. McAbee would have.
I'll ask you to lay a better foundation for that.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you agree that Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wilson made promises or made statements in their campaign that were contrary to Mr. Wilson?
Objection, hearsay.
Not asking for the truth of the matter, sir, just asking if they made those statements. If he's aware that they made statements such as that, I like that, so they know whether they made statements such as that. You have to say.
Could you repeat the question?
Let me put it this way. I believe you testified that Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wilson, during their campaign, made comments about Mr. Preston that were opposed to him or against him. But once they took office, neither one took any action against Mr. Preston. Is that an accurate characterization of your testimony?
Yes,
Now, you had your real estate license for 1 year, from approximately September 2007 until 2008.
that's correct.
And during that period, you were affiliated with Allison Properties.
Yes,
Who is Amy Plummer?
she's also an agent with Allison Properties.
And the 2 of you together operated a business that you called Peerless Economic Development.
Yes,
And the goal of that business was to do site consulting and sell real estate to companies locating in Anderson County.
yes, commercial and industrial properties.
You also appointed her to the Anderson County Economic Development Advisory Board.
Yes,
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. McAbee, I'm showing you what's been previously admitted as Plaintiff's Exhibit 57. Is that a letter from you to Ms. Plummer noting notifying her that you have appointed her to the Anderson County Economic Advisory Board?
Yes.
And you received one commission in your real estate career, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you remember what the amount was for?
It was approximately $72,000.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Your Honor, this is if it's what I think it is, it's an exhibit that we believe the judge is here.
It's 60, I believe.
It's 60. I'm sorry. I was wrong.
Okay.
Should I correct myself?
You may proceed, ma'am.
I'm handing you what's been previously admitted as plaintiff's exhibit 60. Can you identify that for me, please, sir?
Yes. It is the commission check for the property I was involved in selling.
Do you remember which property that was?
It's a property located on Highway 20 north of Belton, approximately 30 acres.
Who was the purchaser of that property?
B&B Properties.
And who was the seller?
Steve K.